All right, let me welcome you to the Edge of Success Business Roundtable. Appreciate so much you joining me today. I'm looking forward to our discussion. But before we get into that, I'd love for each of you just to introduce yourselves. So, Mark, why don't you start us out?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Thank you for inviting me to join you today. My name is Mark Knowles. I'm one of the founders of GovDirections.com. We serve a sector that monitors local, state, and federal government contracts. We found this need was a business problem, and we provided the solution based on some consulting work that I did in the past and trying to find opportunities that existed in the government sector. And it's grown from the basement of our house to now we employ just over 20 individuals in the Atlanta, Georgia area and serve right at about 140,000 companies worldwide in some capacity who use our site to track what's happening at the sector. Just as an aside, I'm also an adjunct with the professor with the University of Georgia, and I teach in the graduate school program where I teach future contracting officers how to write the RFPs and bids that folks respond to in the private sector. And so what I've found as somewhat of a gift is the ability to translate those two communities together so they understand each other. And that's what we work to do in our business.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I call Mark kind of the matchmaker. He's
Yep,
matching people up, So or the dating app for government opportunities. So, all right, Sowm, tell us about you.
Sure. Sowm Bharadwaj. I'm based out of Dallas, Fort Worth area. I have a master's in electrical engineering and an MBA, so kind of bring a very unique perspective to the table. I've been a consultant for a long time. Do consulting in the energy and utility space. I've done that for about 15, 20 years now. And right now I'm working on acquiring a small business. So looking at essential services primarily. So working a lot on the small size deals, sub 5 million.
Okay, that's exciting. And your background is interesting as well with consulting and now going into becoming the business owner. And Ken can probably tell you a little bit about acquiring. So Ken, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, again, Dave, thanks. And nice to meet you, Mark and Sowm. I'm the CEO founder of the Black Rose Group. We're a boutique M&A shop based in Lafayette, Louisiana. I've got offices in Austin, Dallas, Memphis, Philadelphia, Raleigh, Durham, and a small satellite office in New York City. We're investment bankers, pretty much generalists. I have a master's in trust. It seems like over the years that my strength is in getting people to trust me to handle their big financial problem. I've been doing that for 45 years. Used to be a wealth manager. Now I'm an M&A guy, but really the same concept. We're industry agnostic. So really any good business owner that's profitable, that's looking for a liquidity event is a possible client for us. And looking forward to learning from the other two individuals in the meeting.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Ken's had some recent good-sized deals that he's closed, and so that's always exciting.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to relationships, and they grow over the years. The longer you're in a space, I mean, Mark's probably experienced that too. So let me take a moment just to introduce myself. Dave Pennington. I'm the founder and owner of Penn Coaching and Consulting. I always say this is kind of my third career. I started in ministry, mostly larger scale, good-sized congregations, usually with a private school, a lot of administrative leadership, visionary work there. I've done a lot in private school. I think I've been a head of school of 5 different schools. I've been an executive director of a state group with 37 schools in it, president of a state group on a national board, adjunct prof. Like Ken, I've done some teaching. And by the way, Ken, I love the graduate students best. Those are the ones I enjoy teaching the most. Because they actually typically really want to learn. And I particularly love those that are coming back to graduate school after they've been kicked around a little bit because they're very hungry and they're pretty teachable. About 10 years ago, I started Penn Coaching Consulting. I've had a little bit of an iteration there, started in the leadership development space, really done a lot with leadership development, done some in scaling, trying to help them organizationally structure where they can scale and grow. And then about 2 years ago, I made a shift where I'm now focusing on business exits for any business owners, but primarily I'm leaning into the boomers because a lot of them are looking at exiting out in the next 3 to 5 years, and many of them don't have an exit plan. And in many cases, they'll either leave money on the table or maybe not even be able to sell their businesses. But I'm more of a pre-sale strategist. Ken's kind of in the transactional space where he helps you buy or sell. I'm more in the one who helps you get ready to sell. And if you can do it right, believe it or not, you can double your multiple, which is really helpful when you get ready to step out. So that's really what I'm doing. And I'm delighted to have the three of you with me today. I'm going to share one slide. I have an assessment that I use to help business owners understand the value of their company, and it's based upon these 8 drivers. And I just want to take a moment to walk through each of them very, very briefly, and then we're going to focus on the monopoly control today. So I'll save that one for last. When you think about financial performance, obviously you have top of line income, you have expenses, and then you have your profitability. And a lot of times what happens with financial performance, we primarily focus on the top of the line revenue, but that doesn't tell the whole story. But when someone looks at buying your business, they're interested in that profitability and what they can do to grow that, and then even the potential for future development as well. That has to do with how dependent you are upon either one, like employee, like a major employee, or a customer. Sometimes you can have one customer that can provide half or more of your income, which can be a little dangerous. Maybe one supplier. If you're in a certain industry, if you get all your supplies from one supplier and something happens with that one supplier, then things can go south pretty quickly. The valuation teeter-totter, really think of cash flow. You have money coming in, and unfortunately you have money going out, and it would be nice if it all just aligned exactly the right way where you got money in first before it had to go out. But if you run a business, sometimes that cash flow is a little goofy and you have to work at making sure you're able to manage that. Recurring revenue is just what it sounds like. Think of Netflix. If you can have a business where you have like a subscription model or something where you can get steady, consistent income that comes in each month for a product or a service that you're providing, that's like gold to a buyer because they look for that. It certainly helps their cash flow and helps them with revenue. Growth potential is the likelihood of growth, and then at what rate? When buyers are looking at buying a business, they're thinking, okay, can I grow this? And how fast can I grow this? What are my obstacles? Do I need to hire additional staff? Do I have the proper assembly line or whatever it might be, depending on the business? Customer satisfaction is exactly that. The idea is how likely will someone either repurchase from you or even perhaps recommend you. And then hub and spoke really deals with the idea of how dependent the business is on you as the owner. And the more dependent the business is on you as an owner, then the valuation typically goes down and the attractiveness to buyers goes down because people don't want to buy a business that's dependent upon the owner, because when the owner goes away, they're concerned that the clients or customers are going to go away. And sometimes you wind up doing what they call a workout, which is, hey, I want to buy your business. I'm going to reduce the price and I need you to stick around for a couple of years. And typically sellers don't like to do that. The one today we're talking about is monopoly control. And monopoly control really concerns how do you differentiate yourself. There are a lot of people that are in the M&A space. So how do you differentiate yourself there? And so sometimes when you've been there for a while, that helps you. But if you're trying to develop something or grow into something, then you have to have a way to differentiate yourself. You want to make sure, okay, how can we do business in a way that's going to attract people, bring referrals, and all the kind of things that are needed to really develop and grow a business. Mark, as you've worked with different people, tell us a little bit about things you've done or things you've seen others do that allowed them to differentiate themselves and develop that monopoly that we're talking about.
Differentiators are so critical in any kind of business. I think it's a big thing I teach to our clients oftentimes. We primarily are a website, but something there that's just unique to us. And what we have found is that the education factor, it actually helps us. And so that's something we've driven to try to help us monopolize so people trust us more.
I'm wondering, because I know a lot of what you're providing, you're connecting the dots for your customers. You're going out and finding the opportunities that are available, and then you're connecting those opportunities to your customers. I would assume that probably in your space, the ease of being able to utilize your website or the database that you've developed, the ease and clarity and things like that might be a way that you maybe have differentiated yourself. Would that be true?
I definitely think so. In fact, if you ever watch the Ted Lasso series, it's always believe. Well, at our location, we have keep it simple. That's basically our motto. Everything has to be simple. Point, click. It also has to be provided in such a way that a busy business owner, someone who's also somewhat new or doesn't have really time that is required to really dive into things, that they can get to things quickly without much fanfare. That's really important.
Yeah. So speed is a real key for you, I would assume.
Speed is important. So everything we do, you got to get the information to the client first. Our emails, for example, we've sent up close to 1 billion emails, but every morning at 12:01 a.m., you get an email from us if you're a client of ours, wherever you're at. And so that's because we're going to be first. And those, we know if we come in 2 hours late, that our click rate is significantly lower, and it's to a point that it can actually impact the entire day. So we really have to focus in on that. So quick and simple and timely is critical.
I want to come back to you, Ken. I got another idea I want to talk to you about in a moment. So tell us a little bit about, I know you've done some coaching consulting, and no doubt you've gotten into some of this. And then maybe as you're thinking about buying this business, these are some things that you're needing to think about, maybe have already been thinking about, ways to differentiate yourself. So what might you add to this discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as a buyer, I'm looking to see, like, how do I quantify this, right? Because every small business owner talks about how there's reputation, their seller has connections and relationships with customers and stuff like that. So as a buyer, how do I know what the true differentiation is? So one of the questions I ask is, have you increased your prices in the last 3 years? And what has been the impact of it? So the way I'm looking at it is like pricing power. So if you have a true differentiation of some sort, so for example, a licensing requirement that nobody else, it's hard to get, or if it's like a regulatory requirement. So that's a moat in itself. But there's still competition. So I asked the question, how many times have you increased prices? Okay, I've increased 5%. I've retained all the customers still. So that is true differentiation in action versus a hypothetical or self proclaimed differentiation. So that's one question, that to quantify that for me as a buyer. Again, then it goes down to marketing, because if they're two different ways, right? There's closing a deal and there's retaining a customer. So closing a deal could be like a one-time thing. It could be, well, we're closing on discounts, so we're giving everybody a discount to close the deal. So that's not necessarily like a good deal, right? But
a short-term deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very transactional. But on the other hand, there is this trust that's built up. We've actually delivered quality work. That way we could sell and close at a premium price. So I think that's how it shows up for me while evaluating smaller businesses.
You're in the M&A world, and obviously you've been there for a while and you have a lot of relationships, but why do people come to you versus going to your competitors?
Okay. That's obviously the $64,000 question we wake up every morning thinking about. I really believe that the talent that you surround yourself with in my space is a really big differentiator. I've recently added a couple of young investment bankers to Black Rose that have research capabilities. And I've been in the capital market business cycles probably as well as most people. And I really believe that the ability to earn trust from a mom and pop business, from a baby boomer, I think it all boils down to trust. And I believe that I genuinely am able to earn trust with people a little sooner, a little quicker than other people. Why? A little bit of it is a gift from God, and knowing yourself well and being honest and having integrity. And the other part is I've been a wealth manager. So a lot of these baby boomers I've known because I used to manage all their assets. And so that trust has already been there. I really believe that when you're providing consulting work of any kind, like Mark and Sowm are doing and I'm doing, I mean, trust is just a huge factor. There's nothing that can overcome trust, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Well, that's insightful, and I think it's true. Mark, I want to come back to you. You talked about speed and ease. My guess is you've seen a lot of things change in that space in some ways, and maybe a lot of other things still stay the same. And what I mean by that, almost a little dated, if that makes sense. And I'm wondering how you've managed to provide the services you provided where it's quicker, easier, and all of that. So any insights in your space that you've learned there, or ways to bridge an industry that might be a little bit stuck in time in some ways, but obviously the people that are getting those jobs are up to speed. So any insights there?
Sure. One thing that you touch on there, the governments themselves are incremental in nature. They don't move quick. And then we're in a field that moves extremely quick. The technology is changing daily. Every morning I wake up afraid we're going to be out of business tomorrow. It's just that quick of change. in order to avoid that, you have to stay on top of the game. You got to stay on top of technology. You have to understand, you got to embrace technology in all different ways. And so I really try to encourage our staff to do that. And so instead of using one AI tool, we're using 4 AI tools right now. We don't shy away from any kind of measurements. And so that's important. I hear the discussion about pricing. That's actually somewhat interesting. I typically have more of a completely reverse sort of approach to that. In pricing, we move almost instantaneously. We try to be able to project what you will pay when you hit our website based on a lot of things that you give us, the information, the data that you give us. And so we are constantly fluid, and we've never once raised prices on anyone who works with us since 1998. So if you came in at 1998, you're saying you're paying the exact same price that you pay right now. But now new clients who come in, we have to be on top of that. Now they're paying significantly higher. They come in with real more expectations of things. Things have changed. Going back to your question, that's how we just have to constantly move. And then, of course, what Ken said about trust, our clients have to trust us. And to some extent, that's the part I get with the pricing. They trust that we're not going to change much in terms of the costs they have, but they sure expect us to continue to stay on top of all the technology and having all that available. But we're a little bit, being a web-based business, sometimes I describe us as an airplane with so many seats, but we don't really have a limitation on seats. And so it just continues to expand. So we can put you in just about any spot on that plane we need to put you at in order to get you into the door. And that's how we approach things on all of that. So really trying to make it all work together.
So I'm hearing instead of pricing, you have unlimited seats. So the growth area is big enough that you could grow that way by adding more and more clients.
Yeah, we spoke quickly about the types of business models, and we're a recurring charge system. And so that's our only goal. Our only focus is 1, new business, of course, and 2, retention. And we have to keep that retention rate. And we're in a small to medium-sized business market where a significant portion of companies will go out of business within a year. And we kind of know that going into it. Everybody has great plans, but to make that to year 2, year 3, year 5, that's a difficult process. And so we try to help them in that. We don't beat ourselves down when we have clients walk away or they go out of business. And so we spend time on doing things that retains companies, but we really spend most of our time on bringing in new clients. And that's important to the process.
That's actually one of the questions I noted down for you, Mark, to ask in your world, what does differentiation looks like? And I'm glad you brought that up.
You've done the consulting coaching kind of world, but I know your focus right now is on buying this business, and maybe we can bring a little bit of that in here. What kind of thoughts as you look at acquiring the business and trying to develop it? And I'm just wondering, as you think about developing, growing your business, I find myself advising and coaching others, and then sometimes I say, you know what, I should probably do that myself. So as you anticipate this new hat, what's rolling around in your mind here for taking it from where it is and moving it ahead?
So I think it would depend exactly on the specific business that I end up acquiring. But in general, I think there are multiple ways to do that. One of the things that actually relates to the Moat question you had earlier is offering a service, the full value chain if you can. So if you're providing one service, it's easier for your client to replace you. But if you have everything and they come to you for everything, then it's kind of hard. The switching costs are very high for them. One of the ways I'm thinking about is how do I add more product/service to the business that I end up acquiring? That also gives me a little bit of upsell, cross-sell opportunity. There is a couple of businesses I'm looking at right now in the area. It's HVAC and sheet metal fabrication. So DFW is a growing market from a real estate perspective. So there's definitely opportunity to add more customers to these businesses. Sure. So that's another way to do that. But I want to be careful saying that because I don't want to add customers that I can't serve. So that's going to be a good balance to look at. Again, the other one is looking at adjacent businesses. So if somebody does, let's say, HVAC installations, well, they have to buy sheet metal from somebody else. Can we just add that to the mix? Now, all of that is ambitious and it's not something that you could do in the first year of buying the business. But over time, there are ways to expand, adding the right staff, like Ken was talking about, adding the right people. That is very, very important. So I also want to make sure that the day-to-day responsibilities are run by somebody else so I can focus on the growth and the strategy and all of that stuff. So there are multiple options depending on the business I end up acquiring. I guess we'll dig deeper into
See how,
what is applicable there.
Yeah, you got a lot of good thinking. I love the idea of adding additional lines of service. And you are right. Once you have a customer, they already trust you. They're already working with you. They already know you. And a lot of times it's not that difficult to add another line of service or a product or whatever because they're already part of your network. All right, Ken, as you think about your world, you talked about people. I've always found that if I can get the right people, I try to work at developing those people. Is there anything particular that you've done to help develop people in your company that you feel like has made an impact or a difference?
Dave, thank you for the opportunity to answer what's obviously an extremely important question. I put maybe more emphasis than I should in an old Latin term, gravitas. I'm in a business where my clients want to see some gravitas. They want to see that I don't blink when other people blink. They want to see that if a deal takes 2 years to close for whatever reason, that I don't bail on them or find it to be so hard to accomplish their goals. At the end of the day, my job is really wrapped around client service 101. As long as my clients' best interests are being considered as the only goal in the project, and we carry ourselves with the kind of gravitas and the kind of confidence, we are very successful. But I believe that if the minute as a leader that people see you sweating, that they see that the boss is at the top of his game, I think it crumbles an organization. So I really am a real big fan of having young people develop their own gravitas and allowing them to feel invincible. That's the only way I get greatness. I'm not looking to be like everybody else. I don't want to be ordinary. I don't want to be average. But when I walk in a room, I want people to know that I'm there. And there's a reason I'm there. They called me there, and I'm ready to dominate. And I go in with that kind of gravitas. Without it, I fail. I fail miserably because they can see right through you. They can see that you're not comfortable with yourself. And I believe young people, particularly someone like Sowm, I can see she already has a little gravitas. And that attracts me. And I say, let her go. Let her do her thing and back her up. Failure's not an option. So it's just really allowing excellence to grow around you by showing them that, you know what, we put our pants on just like they do, or our skirt just like they do. And there's nobody's better than me. I may not be better than them, but they're not better than me.
All right. Well, thanks, Ken, and all of you. We've talked about trust. I think what Ken was saying there about what clients our customers are wanting is they have a goal or objective that they're after. It may be to buy something, it may be to sell something, it may be to get a contract, it may be to get a service or whatever. And no matter what kind of line of work you're in, if the customer knows that you are vested and interested in helping them accomplish what they want to accomplish, and that you will do everything you can, obviously within reason, that makes a huge difference. And it does build that trust we've talked about, and that repetitive where they want to do more business with you because they've seen the experience of it. So I want to thank you for your time today and appreciate you being with me. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.